rules. So let's look at this, because Tom Brady has asked the National Football League about whether or not he can come back and play. And they told him no, or that they didn't like the idea very much, which shocks me, to be honest. I thought the owners and Roger Goodell were, well, I guess I gave them too much credit, that they would be smarter than this.
The National Football League just told the greatest quarterback in history that he can't come back and play. Let that sink in for a second. Tom Brady, 7 Super Bowl rings, the guy who built the modern NFL into what it is today, asked if he could return to the field, and the league said no. Well, not exactly no. They said they didn't like the idea very much, which might be even worse than a hard no, because it means they're scared.
Now, look, are there reasons for that? Yeah, this is ESPN, by the way. Brady, who last played in 2022, is currently a minority owner of the Las Vegas Raiders, emphasized in a recent interview with CNBC that he is, quote, happily retired. Okay. But the 7-time Super Bowl winning quarterback also acknowledged he asked the league about its rules pertaining to active players holding ownership stakes.
Here's what makes this absolutely wild. Brady would need to give up his ownership stake in the Las Vegas Raiders to play. He owns 5% of the team, purchased it in 2024 alongside Knithead Capital Management, so he's not just some former player looking for one more run. He's literally part owner of an NFL franchise, and apparently he's willing to walk away from that investment just to get back on the field at 48 years old. The league's response? Salary cap issues, conflict of interest concerns, all the bureaucratic reasons why this can't happen. But watch what he said at the flag football game last week.
It's at the flag football game. I love being out here playing in the flag game. I love not getting hit. I've really got a lot of really fun things I'm involved with. It's never going to get old throwing passes to incredible athletes on the football field, but if anything, that game reconfirmed to me that I'm happy in my retirement.
Notice the language there. I'm happy in my retirement, not I'm staying retired, not I'm done with football. Happy in retirement. That's the kind of careful phrasing someone uses when they're leaving the door open. And then he admits on CNBC that he actually inquired about the league's rules on active players holding ownership stakes. You don't ask those questions unless you're seriously considering it. The comparison to Philip Rivers is fascinating here. Rivers came back at 44 after not playing for 4 years, started 3 games for the Colts, and everyone tuned in to watch because we wanted to see if he could still do it.
Quote, we're tired of you dominating, Tom. I got to tell you, the NFL looks terrible in this. I mean, seriously. Wow. Absolutely classic Tom Brady, but the NFL dropping the we don't like the idea very much is just admitting a 48-year-old GOAT would still cook the entire league and send every young quarterback straight to therapy. Yeah, right here, DraftKings. Oh, shit. Here we go again. God, that was a good game.
Now imagine that times 10. Philip Rivers was a good quarterback who had a solid career. Tom Brady is the undisputed greatest of all time. The ratings for his comeback would be astronomical. Every single game would be must-watch television. NFL Sunday Ticket subscribers would specifically tune in just to watch Brady play, regardless of what team they support. The merchandise sales alone would be insane. And yet the NFL is saying no. Or rather, they're saying they don't like it very much. Which brings us to the real question here. Why would the league turn down what would obviously be the biggest story in sports?
Best games ever. God, that's crazy. The NFL told Tom Brady no, let that sink in. The greatest to ever do it got rejected by the league he built. Whoa! That's crazy. Tom Brady at 48 still had the NFL scared enough to shut down his comeback. He could still cook half these starters with one good month of prep. Especially after watching Philip Rivers, no doubt about it. Because I guarantee you, and you could tell it during flag football, Tom Brady's got a better arm. Always did have a better arm than Philip Rivers. Definitely got a better arm now than Philip Rivers.
The salary cap argument doesn't hold up under scrutiny. Yes, there would be complications. How do you charge a team's salary cap when the player is also a part owner? What's the fair market value of his contract? Those are legitimate questions, but they're not insurmountable problems. The league has an entire department of lawyers and accountants who could figure this out in a week. They've solved way more complicated issues before. The conflict of interest angle is more interesting. Brady as part owner would have access to sensitive team information. He'd be in ownership meetings, hearing about draft strategy, free agency plans, long-term roster construction. Then he'd go suit up and play against teams whose strategies he might know about. That's a genuine concern, but again, it's solvable. You create information barriers. You limit his access during the playing season. You make it work because the upside is too massive to ignore.
Yeah, the FUR is what the NFL answered back. I mean, seriously. What is the NFL thinking here? Now, look, what they should tell him is, yeah, you can come back and play. It's obviously got to be for the Raiders. Now, I know you may be thinking to yourself, well, wait a minute, they're drafting Fernando Mendoza. Yeah, they are. But they're also...
Think about the context here. Super Bowl ratings were down this year. Halftime show viewership in the United States dropped. The league needs positive attention. They need storylines that capture the casual fan, not just the diehards. And they're sitting on the greatest storyline in modern sports history. And they're saying no because of some technical complications they could absolutely solve if they wanted to. Mark Davis has been talking about how significant Brady's role with the Raiders is supposed to be. Strategic advisor, involved in major decisions. But Brady himself told CNBC he doesn't really have a daily role, that there's no job description for minority owners. So which is it? Is he deeply involved or is he barely there? Because if he's barely there anyway, walking away to play shouldn't be that complicated.
And the business value I mean, are you afraid that this is going to be the biggest story in sports the whole year? Because it would be. And it wouldn't be close. I mean, the moment the news hit, bam, Tom Brady's coming back to the National Football League. It would be the biggest story of the year until he takes a snap in preseason. And then that's the next biggest story. And then the next biggest story is...
Here's what the NFL is really afraid of. They're afraid that a 48-year-old Tom Brady could actually come back and be good. Not just serviceable, actually good. Throw 30 touchdowns, lead the Raiders to 10 or 11 wins, make the playoffs. Because if that happens, it exposes every other team in the league. It says that your expensive young quarterback isn't actually that special. It says that maybe experience and football IQ matter more than arm strength and mobility. The league has spent the last decade building up this new generation of quarterbacks. Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow. They've invested everything in the narrative that these guys represent the future of football. And then here comes Brady, old enough to be their father, proving that the old way still works.
What do you think that'd be like around Tom Brady? For the NFL owners, Roger Goodell, and the league to not see the mega value there of the attention that this would bring to the league, when frankly the league needs some good attention. I mean, Super Bowl numbers down, halftime numbers in the U.S. down, and I'm talking about the U.S.
Fox Sports would absolutely step aside. They'd elevate Greg Olsen back to Brady's broadcasting role. That's not even a question. The real complication is what happens with Fernando Mendoza. The Raiders are expected to draft him. Brady has been vocal about his philosophy that young quarterbacks should sit and learn behind veterans. He's always said that's the right way to develop talent. So who better to learn behind than Tom Brady himself? Raiders fans would lose their minds. Would you rather watch Kirk Cousins play quarterback or Tom Brady? That's not even a real question. The stadium would sell out every single game. The merchandise would fly off the shelves. The local media coverage would be non-stop. From a pure business perspective, this is the easiest decision the Raiders could ever make.
Well, Brady's gone. Now, what do you do about the salary cap? I don't know. Yet the league would have to charge the Raiders a certain amount for the salary cap for a contract. I don't know how that would work, considering Brady is an owner. That would be the ownership monetary salary cap situation is the biggest question mark in all of this. Him just coming back and playing when he can play for the team that he is part of ownership, and the fact that
the social media reaction to this news has been overwhelming. One comment said, "We're tired of you dominating Tom." Another said, "The NFL told Tom Brady no, let that sink in. The greatest to ever do it got rejected by the league he built." That second one really captures the absurdity here. This is a league that exists in its current form largely because of what Tom Brady accomplished over 2 decades. The ratings, the international expansion, the legitimacy as America's sport. Brady was the face of all of that. And now they're telling him he can't play because it might create some paperwork problems. The comparison people keep making is to Michael Jordan coming back to play baseball, then basketball again. Jordan was 40 when he played his final NBA season. He averaged 20 points per game. Was he the same player he was at 30? No, but he was still Michael Jordan. He could still impact games. He still drew massive crowds, and the league benefited enormously from having him back.
Hilarious. Not only that, but the Raiders mess around, win 10, 11 games out there. I mean, you know. And, again, no better guy for Fernando to learn from. In the quarterback room, week in, week out. Now, can he come back and play for a different team? No, he can't come back and play. I mean, you know, he's not going to come back and play for the Niners. I can understand them saying no to that. But
Brady's situation is different because he's not just coming back to play, he's coming back as an owner player, which has never been done in modern professional sports, and that's exactly what makes it so compelling. This isn't just a nostalgia tour, this is a fundamental challenge to how we think about player ownership relationships. If Brady can pull this off, it opens the door for other retired players who own stakes in teams to come back. It creates a whole new category of athlete. The league is probably also worried about what happens if Brady gets hurt. He's 48 years old. His body is not what it was at 35. If he tears an ACL or suffers a serious concussion, the optics would be terrible. The NFL doesn't want headlines about how they let a 50-year-old man get destroyed on the field. They don't want the liability concerns. They don't want the questions about player safety when you've got someone that age taking hits from defensive ends in their 20s. But Brady has always been smart about protecting himself. He's never been a scrambling quarterback. He gets the ball out quick. He reads defenses better than anyone who's ever played. His game was never built on physical tools that decline with age. It was built on processing speed and decision making. Those things don't disappear at 48. So let's talk about what this really means. The NFL is at a crossroads. They can either embrace this moment and let Tom Brady write one final chapter in the most remarkable career in football history, or they can hide behind salary cap technicalities and conflict of interest concerns and watch the biggest story in sports die because they were too scared to figure out the details. Think about what they're giving up. Every sports media outlet in the world would cover this story. Every single game Brady played would be appointment television. The international attention would be massive. China, Europe, Latin America, everywhere the NFL is trying to expand, they'd have the perfect storyline. The greatest player ever, coming back at nearly 50 years old, trying to prove he can still compete. That's a movie script. That's the kind of narrative that transcends sports. And the Raiders would benefit more than any other team. They're a franchise trying to establish themselves in Las Vegas. They've got a beautiful new stadium. They need a reason for casual fans to buy tickets. Tom Brady is that reason. Even if he only plays one season, even if they don't make the playoffs, the buzz around that team would be unlike anything Las Vegas has seen in professional sports. For Fernando Mendoza, this would be the opportunity of a lifetime. Imagine being a rookie quarterback and getting to spend every day in the film room with Tom Brady, learning how he prepares, watching how he reads defenses, understanding his approach to the mental side of the game. That's worth more than any coaching you could possibly receive. It would accelerate Mendoza's development by years. The salary cap issue is genuinely complicated, but it's not impossible to solve. The league could establish a fair market value for Brady's services based on comparable veteran quarterback contracts. They could require the Raiders to count that full amount against their cap, even if Brady's actual compensation is structured differently because of his ownership stake. They could create transparency requirements where Brady's contract details are publicly disclosed to ensure there's no cap circumvention happening. These are all workable solutions. The conflict of interest concern is more about optics than actual competitive advantage. Yes, Brady would technically have access to ownership level information. position, but he's not going to be in the war room during games calling plays based on inside knowledge of other teams' strategies. He's going to be on the field trying to execute the Raiders' game plan. And frankly, Tom Brady has always had an encyclopedic knowledge of opposing teams anyway. That's what made him great. Adding ownership level access doesn't really change that equation much. What the NFL is really worried about is setting a precedent. If they let Brady do this, what happens when the next retired player who owns a small stake in a team wants to come back? What happens when someone tries to use this as a loophole to circumvent salary cap rules? Those are legitimate concerns, but they're also concerns you address through careful rulemaking, not by shutting down the most exciting possibility in sports. The league could easily say this is a one-time exception for a unique circumstance. They could establish strict criteria that would need to be met for any future owner-player situations. They could require supermajority approval from other owners. They could build in safeguards that prevent this from becoming a regular thing while still allowing Brady to have this moment. And let's be honest about something else. The NFL owners are scared that Tom Brady would actually be good. They've convinced themselves that the league has moved on, that the new generation of quarterbacks with their mobility and their cannon arms represent evolution, that Brady's style of play is outdated, and they don't want to be proven wrong. They don't want to watch a 48-year-old man stand in the pocket and pick apart defenses using nothing but timing and anticipation and 25 years of experience. Because if Brady comes back and throws for 4,000 yards and 30 touchdowns, it raises uncomfortable questions. Why are we paying Josh Allen $50 million a year? Why did we give Deshaun Watson $230 million guaranteed? Why are we so convinced that athletic ability matters more than football intelligence? Brady succeeding would challenge the entire economic model of how teams value quarterbacks. The Phillip Rivers comparison keeps coming up because it's the most recent example of a veteran quarterback coming back after time away. Rivers was 44, hadn't played in 4 years, and started 3 games for the Colts. He wasn't great. He threw for decent yardage, but also threw interceptions. He looked exactly like what you'd expect from a quarterback in that situation, but people still watched because they were curious. Tom Brady is not Phillip Rivers. Brady's last season was 2022. He threw for over 4,700 yards and 25 touchdowns at age 45. He led the Buccaneers to the playoffs. He didn't retire because he couldn't play anymore. He retired because he was tired of the grind, tired of the preparation, tired of being away from his family. Those are all legitimate reasons, but they're not physical limitations. If Brady wanted to come back, he wouldn't be coming back as a shell of himself trying to recapture past glory. He'd be coming back as someone who could legitimately help a team win games, and that's what terrifies the NFL. They can handle a nostalgia tour. They can't handle Tom Brady actually being competitive at 48 because it breaks their entire narrative about how football works. The flag football game was revealing. Brady looked comfortable. His arm looked strong. He was making throws that most 48-year-olds couldn't dream of making, and he clearly still loves playing. You could see it in his body language. The joy of competition, the thrill of executing plays, that doesn't just go away because you sign retirement papers. So where does this leave us? Tom Brady has inquired about coming back. The NFL has said they don't like the idea very much. That's not a hard no, but it's not an invitation either. Brady says he's happily retired, but he also said that while simultaneously admitting he explored the possibility of returning. Those two statements don't really align unless you understand that Brady is keeping his options open. The Raiders are in a fascinating position. They're about to draft Fernando Mendoza. They're reportedly interested in signing Kirk Cousins as a veteran bridge quarterback. But if Tom Brady wanted to come back and play for them, how do you say no to that? How do you choose Kirk Cousins over Tom Brady? Even a diminished Tom Brady is more interesting than Kirk Cousins at his peak. Mark Davis has always been an unconventional owner. He moved the team to Las Vegas. He hired Josh McDaniels and then fired him mid-season. He brought in Brady as a minority owner with a vague strategic advisory role. He's not afraid to make bold moves. If anyone would be willing to navigate the complexity of having an owner-player on their roster, it would be Mark Davis. The business case is overwhelming. The Raiders would become the most talked about team in football overnight. Every game would be a national broadcast. The merchandise sales would be astronomical. The season ticket waiting list would explode. From a pure revenue perspective, this is a no-brainer. The only question is whether the league office will allow it. And that's what this comes down to. Roger Goodell and the other owners need to decide whether they're going to embrace an unprecedented moment in sports history, or whether they're going to hide behind bureaucratic concerns. They need to decide whether the NFL is a league that celebrates greatness or a league that's afraid of it. Tom Brady has earned the right to make this decision for himself. He's given the NFL 23 years of his life. He's generated billions of dollars in revenue. He's been the face of the league through its most successful era. If he wants to come back and play at 48, the league should figure out how to make it work. They should create the framework. They should solve the salary cap issues. They should address the conflict of interest concerns. They should do whatever it takes to let the greatest quarterback in history have one more chapter. Because 20 years from now, nobody's going to remember the salary cap complications. Nobody's going to care about the ownership conflict concerns. They're going to remember whether the NFL had the courage to let Tom Brady come back at 48 and see if he could still play. And if the league says no, if they let this moment pass because they were too scared or too rigid or too concerned about precedent, that's going to be their legacy. They had a chance to create the greatest sports story of the decade, and they said no because of paperwork. So what do you think? Should the NFL let Tom Brady come back?